Stench soup.
I opened my eyes at 3 in the morning and stared out the window. Everything was on fire. Buildings, cars, and even the sky. The world is burning, I said to myself over and over as I watched the city burn before me. I tried to move, but I couldn't find any strength within me. I was sleeping on the couch with my clothes still on. I closed my eyes. A few seconds later, all of a sudden there was an explosion. It was so loud that it hurt my ears. I opened my eyes back up again to see nothing had happened. I stood up and walked to the window. Everything looked calm and peaceful outside. The sky was completely clear now. No smoke or ash could be seen anywhere. Peeking down from the 10th floor, everything appeared fine. The sun rose around 6 o'clock in the morning and life went on as usual. People woke up early, took their kids to school and started heading off to work. Some people were dressed casually while others wore business attire. I was still awake. Even after witnessing what I saw last night, I found myself unable to sleep. For some reason, I wanted to keep watching everyone's faces pass by. Eventually, though, hunger got the best of me and I decided to get something to eat. As soon as I left my apartment building, the smell of fire hit my nostrils again. But unlike before, this time there was no fear or panic involved, only sadness and loss. Oh, I wandered through the street aimlessly, not knowing where to go first until I stumbled upon a familiar coffee shop. This place always has good coffee and free wireless internet. It was open, so I walked inside. As I sat down at the counter and opened up my laptop, I could feel someone standing next to me. Then he spoke. "You are lucky to be alive." The voice sounded muffled but clear enough for me to understand. When the world starts burning, it doesn't matter whether you believe in God. It only matters how much you want him to exist. He paused for a second as if thinking about something. I was suddenly scared out of my mind. Everything started spinning around me, making me dizzy. My head started throbbing more intensely by the minute. A single tear fell down the side of my cheek before rolling down my neck and landing right onto the table below my face. That must have been the moment that everything turned black. "Hey, are you okay?" The voice startled me awake. As I tried to look up, a strong hand grabbed hold of mine, holding me steady. "Are you hurt? Can you stand up?" The owner of the voice pulled me up until I was able to fully regain control of myself. When I looked up, there stood a tall man staring at me intently through thick-rimmed glasses. "Where am I?" I asked aloud, still somewhat disoriented, but regained most of my composure quickly enough. "What happened?" I finally managed to ask after realizing it wasn't a dream or nightmare. "You were sleeping," replied the stranger with an odd smile on his lips as he held out his hand. He had dark brown hair cut short and piercing blue eyes that seemed to pierce deep into your soul with ease. "My name is Richard," he introduced himself. I said, shaking. "Samuel." I then realized something else. Something I should have noticed sooner. I was naked except for my boxer shorts. Richard nodded to himself knowingly as he studied me. "I see. Well, my place is only 2 minutes from here. Would you care to join me?" Before I could answer, Richard already turned around and began walking. I hurriedly followed behind, not quite sure of what I was doing or why, but willing to follow his lead no matter where he may take me. I walked down the road side by side with him, trying my best to keep up with a quick pace. As we passed by some more buildings, they all appeared perfectly normal, although everything looked just slightly different than usual. Richard led me into a building until stopping at a red door at the end of a long, narrow hallway. "Please make yourself at home. There are clean clothes and fresh towels in the bathroom." With that, Richard stepped inside the room before closing the door quietly behind him. I jumped in the shower immediately. Although this whole thing happened to me, I still felt embarrassed about getting found almost naked on the street by a stranger. After washing myself thoroughly to remove any remaining dirt or sweat, I dried off quickly before slipping on some clean clothes that Richard had left out for me. The apartment was pretty nice, very minimalistic, with most of the space being used for open rooms with bare walls. "Here you go," said Richard as he re-entered the living area holding 2 energy drinks and a bottle of water. "So what did you see last night when you were sleeping?" he asked, his eyes staring directly into mine, searching for answers deep within them. Did it happen or just a dream? I stared blankly into his piercing blue gaze, completely dumbfounded by how honest he was being and wanting to know why he even cared if it was real or not. I looked away before responding. It didn't really seem like a nightmare. My voice cracked slightly as the tears welled up in the corner of my eye. "Don't cry," said Richard while placing his hand on my shoulder, gently rubbing the soft skin of my arm as he tried comforting me with words that weren't necessary at this point in time. "Tell me." The kindness in his tone along with the gesture gave me strength to continue. I saw the world burning. I could feel my heart racing with excitement and fear all at once. "What else do you remember?" asked Richard slowly. "I can still hear people screaming, cars exploding, buildings falling," I replied, my chest rising and falling rapidly. "But mostly I can still smell the fire. I've never smelled anything like it before." A single tear fell out of one of my eyes as I spoke these last few sentences. "It will be all right. We'll get you home safe and sound soon enough." With that, he released me from his grasp and stood up to open the blinds and windows in order to let some fresh air into the apartment. "Why did you save me?" I asked before he sat down back onto the couch beside me. Richard smiled and laughed a little under his breath before answering. "You're not the first person to ask this question," began Richard. "And believe it or not, there is more than just one answer to this particular question." He paused briefly while taking a sip from his energy drink, then continued with, "I'm an angel." I couldn't help but laugh out loud at how absurd the statement sounded, although deep inside of me I knew it must have been true, for some reason. Although it sounds insane, I had no other choice but to trust what my instincts were telling me. So, I started trying to clear my thoughts. "You work for God then? Or, rather, angels do?" My words hung in midair without much thought. "No," answered Richard calmly as he stared off into space as if lost in thought. His expression suddenly turned serious, as if he was thinking about something very important and yet scary all at once. For the briefest moment he looked away towards the window before turning his gaze back to meet mine again. "What is it?" I asked, getting even more worried now by the second. "Well," said Richard, standing up from the couch to walk over to where the blinds and windows were opened before looking out into the city streets, "I suppose we should get going." Richard grabbed hold of his jacket and headed out the door after grabbing his keys and wallet off of the table next to it. After making sure everything he needed for his journey was ready, I followed right behind him, closing the front door quietly behind us. Leave a comment if you'd like to hear part 2!